So, okay, you've probably read a little of the story now about how SkyActiv works and what it aims to do. I thought what would be a lot easier than write about 1,000 words about this vehicle was to talk to Kevin Preest, who's the technical guru for Mazda New Zealand on SkyActiv technology. Kevin and Preece, what are the technical differences between a SkyActiv drivetrain and a regular Mazda 3?
The differences are mainly in construction of the piston and the conrod assembly,
right,
which has a large bearing on combustion chamber shape, and obviously how the the inlet gases and the whole combustion process takes place in the engine. And then of course there's other subtle differences in the transmission as well.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole new transmission, really.
Well,
isn't
it is.
So
that's right.
It's
yes.
more than just subtle, really. Isn't
yeah.
It? Yeah.
The torque converter, of course, has a multi-plate lockup clutch, which can be varied through the whole lockup range, from basically a slipping perspective right to a fully locked up perspective.
Sure.
So the torque converter basically is used to get the car going.
Yeah.
And then once the car is in the movement, then the lockup clutch and its multiplate comes into play.
Wow. So there's been there's been a massive amount of technical development on this, really, isn't it? I mean, as much probably as Mazda put into a rotary engine.
Oh,
at
absolutely.
Least again.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, for drivers then familiar with the Mazda 3, what if any of the tangible differences in the way the car feels and sounds when they're driving it?
I guess the first thing that possibly a driver would notice is when they started up from cold, there is quite a different or an unusual engine or an induction note.
Right.
And basically what that is the engine is in a warm-up mode, and it needs to get the cat up to temperature as quickly as possible.
Okay.
So there's an alteration or retarding of ignition timing.
Yes.
And also of how the camshafts are working, basically to get that cat warmed up as quickly. But that sort of lasts for 20 or 30 seconds.
Yep.
Once that's up and running, then it's basically like driving any car.
Sure.
Engine's very smooth. You feel when you're driving it that you're in control.
Yep.
Very much like you would if you were driving an manual transmission. Sorry.
One thing we did notice in driving this vehicle during the day is how quiet it is at idle. So, and how smooth it is at idle. It very much for a four-cylinder engine, it's quite exceptional, really, isn't it?
And that's interesting you say that, because I've done that comparison to myself, and just sitting here quietly idling and also driving it's so smooth.
Now, one of the interesting things about this car is normally with a new engine, we talk about performance aspects. A manufacturer will say go to a high-octane fuel, because that'll give you the best result. Quite the opposite with a SkyActiv engine, isn't it? You're recommending 91 octane as the best result for this engine in the form it's being presented in New Zealand.
Yes, that's right, because initially in this form in Mazda 3 we're running at a lower compression ratio of 12:1.
Yeah.
And so using the 91 fuel, basically we're extracting the best we can out of that fuel, and because the 91 combustion processes, the fuel actually burns quicker than it does in a higher octane fuel. So we maximise that opportunity, because in the combustion chamber we are actually burning that fuel really quickly and making the most of the energy that's produced from that. And
since it's a cheaper fuel to buy into to start with, it's a win all around, really, isn't it?
Well,
because you're talking about some very impressive economy gains on this fuel.
That's right, and a lot of people only want to drive a car that runs on 91, because there are a lot of tangible savings from doing that.
Now, talking about savings, SkyActiv does carry a premium over what we call a regular Mazda 3 2-litre engine.
Yeah.
So how long do you think it would take before, if somebody buys into this engine, how long do you think it really takes in real world terms before they start seeing an intrinsic return on it, a saving?
Okay, I guess if you look at how many K, it's really much dependent on how many Ks per year you do.
Sure.
And if you're up around the 15 to 20,000 Ks, then you'd expect to recoup that cost in about 2 to 3 years, probably closer to 3 years.
Right.
Yeah. But at the moment, that, I guess, premium price is because of a new technology being introduced.
Sure.
And as it becomes more mainstream across our platform range, then that premium price will disappear.
And it's an exciting future for Mazda, isn't it? Because SkyActiv is going to be going across the entire passenger vehicle range within, from what I can read, 4 years.
Yes, there's certainly plans to introduce that across the range, and I can't give timings on that. I'm not privy to that myself, but certainly will become the basis of Mazda's technology over the next few years.
Well, that's SkyActiv. The recommendation really is read as much about it as you can, and that'll tell you a lot about it, but it's very technical. The easiest way to understand it is to drive the car, and I'll tell you what, it's just a real mind blower. Quite a revolution occurring here. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks Richard.